Hogstye.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Hogstye. This is Alex Zeese coming at you. I am back in Washington, D.C. after my little break going up into the woods. Steve, it's hot down here. I was freezing up there, and now I'm, sweating all the time.
It's even hotter down here.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, summer is upon us now. It's safe to say.
Yeah, it was like in the 90s down here in South Texas.
Yeah, it was 40-something every morning when I was up there in the woods.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. You know how nice 40-something feels?
Not to people from Texas. That's downright frigid. You kidding me? That's wintertime, dude.
Yeah. You guys don't even have, the clothes to deal with it anymore.
I don't own a winter jacket anymore. I used to have, because I've lived all over the...
Well, I know.
If you can name a place, I've lived there.
Yeah.
And so I used to have a bunch of winter stuff, but I've been in the Houston area for a long time now, and so I actually don't own a winter coat.
Yeah. I mean... You probably have a windbreaker. That would be my guess. Is probably your heaviest coat.
Yeah. Well, that's it. And I've got a Redskins little windbreaker thing. It's like my main coat I wear around.
Oh, please let it be like one of the old Joe Gibbs '80s era ones too.
No, it's I got it. Somebody gave it to me. My wife gave it to me for Christmas. My ex-wife gave it to me for Christmas, and it was it's black with the name Redskins on the back.
Oh, okay. So it's one of those like more 90s or 2000s all black type things. Those are good. That's a timeless look.
Yeah, it's fine. I wear it all over the place. It's fine.
And probably get weird stares from Texans fans and their terrible Texans clothing. So
it's funny because I run into Redskins fans every once in a while around here,
right.
And we always stick together. It happened last weekend. Just a guy in a gas station. I saw a car in the parking lot there were only two cars there, and he had like a Redskins emblem or something hanging off the mirror. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the people in there, and one was this super old dude who looked like, he couldn't possibly be a football fan. The other guy had to be him. And so I said, hey, are you a Redskins fan? And we had this long, 5-minute conversation about the team.
Cool.
In a gas station, because that happens sometimes. I see them around.
Well, it's like endangered species finding each other in the wild, probably.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's like two lions run into each other, and, they'll... they sniff their butts.
Yeah, whatever they do. I don't know if that's a lion thing.
Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah, but I was thinking more like two endangered dolphins find each other like, oh, hey, you're one of me.
Yeah, kind of. And we didn't sniff each other's butts.
No, no. You did the Redskins equivalent, which is just shouting HTTR at each other.
Kind of. Yeah, kind of. And of course, because I'm a shameless whore, I also plugged the site.
Of course. Hey, you know what? I'm okay with that shameless whoring. That's why I carry those little business cards with our website on them.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, I need to put a couple in my wallet just so I have them.
Yeah, that's what I do. I just keep 5 in my wallet at all times. And I bought 500 of them. I still haven't been able to get all of them out because, I'm like you, I'm a homebody. So I'm not going to bars just throwing them at people.
I know. It's this whole quarantine thing hasn't changed my life much as we said.
Not much. Here and there you notice things. But anyway, I'm back. Steve and I are both doing some weird, we're both alone in our houses for the first time in a long time. We were talking about that before the show. It's odd. My wife is going to stay up north for 2 months. Your kids are out of town now. So it's weird, man.
It's very weird.
Yeah.
It is super odd.
But we have, not a lot of news this week in Redskins world, but since we're covering centers and guards, and there's a number of guys to get to in that conversation, I think we'll probably lead off with that stuff this week, Steve. Does that work for you as we kind of decide topics on the spot?
Yeah,
Let's start with the poll, because I think the poll leads us into this discussion, because it was, of course, on Brandon Scherff, who is, the leader of this line. So
yeah. And, again, it's when there isn't a better poll out, it usually relates to the position group breakdown, if you haven't noticed.
Sure.
So this is one of these weeks. So here was the poll. One item still hanging over the Redskins is Brandon Scherff's contract. Right now, he's on the 1-year franchise tag. The deadline for renegotiating a long-term deal this offseason is July 15th. What should the team do about Scherff's contract? Only 3 options this week, not 4, the usual 4. One was sign to a max long-term deal now. Play on the other next one, play on the tag, sign next year. And then 3, just let him walk next year. Because there's a group of people out there who believe that. So those are the choices. I could have made up something, a fourth one, but it didn't seem to make sense.
Well,
So
the problem is I'm trying to go in my head what would the fourth one be, and it'd be something stupid like you sign him to a long-term cheap contract. No one, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, right. That's why I didn't use it. So, and again, my OCD says you got to do 4. You got to do 4. I had to force
I'm
myself
with you.
to only do
Hey,
3.
we both have those weird OCD things. Each a little different, but yeah. That's why we do
Alex,
a show.
That's true. That's true. What do you think? So, what's your thoughts, and what do you think the fans would have thought?
I mean, I think the fans are going to be obviously, long-term deal. That's just my gut. Or is that's where the fans will be. I'm probably in that camp more. I won't be upset if he's playing on the franchise tag, this year, and then you do it. But my gut is get him signed, settle that position, because we have a lot of volatility going on the line right now. And, at least if you can get one stud settled in long term, that's a good thing. So
Yeah, I agree with you, actually. That was my thought, is why mess around?
Right.
And it takes 2 to tango, and maybe he doesn't want to sign a deal, but assuming he does,
everything
why on
he
earth would you
said
mess around?
publicly is that he does. And, we all know that what you say publicly and what you say privately are two different things for everybody in this sport and industry. But generally, I think he's been pretty straightforward in saying, I want a long-term deal. We just got to hammer one out.
Yeah. So that was actually 70% of the vote, which is one of the higher vote
Oh,
winners
that's got
we've
to
ever
be
had.
nearly a record.
Although understand that this is a 3-choice thing, not a 4. So, but yeah. And then second place was play on the tag, sign next year, vote of 22%. And here the small 7%, let him walk next year.
I don't get those people.
Well,
do we have comments from those people?
Yeah, well, we do. We've got one of them. I'll get to there. But I got to do Dave, because you told Dave we'd read his comment this week.
It's becoming a running gag between you, me, and Dave. And, just the three of us. No one else cares.
Yeah, and by the way, Dave is writing for a site now. I'm going to plug it here in just a second.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so here's Dave. I don't understand even voting for anything else other than long-term max deal. He's young and already considered one of the top inside offensive linemen in the game, plus our cap room this year and next makes it very affordable. Totally agree with you, Dave. That's my thought, too. In contrast, here's Daryl, who is at Ocon119, says, I know I'm in the minority, but I can't get behind paying an oft-injured guard like he's an elite tackle. I don't know if I'd call him an oft-injured guard. He played every game for a while. He's been on IR now, but I don't agree with you. But that's Daryl's opinion.
I didn't think to look it up, but I mean, we could quickly probably pull how many games he's played, right? If you don't have it in front of you.
We're going to get there.
Okay.
We're going to get there. Don't worry.
Okay.
So here's another guy who is in that view. Who's at Mangy66, says, here's the issue. He's going to turn 29 this season. Do we feel like he plays at the top of his game for 5 more years? And is he worth 8% of our cap while we're trying to rebuild the rest of the O-line and defensive back 7? That's a reasonable position. I think he is going to be worth the money,
sure,
at least for the 3 or 4 years. And the cap is going up.
Might not this year, but...
Yeah, of course. I mean, understand that the cap is a projection of revenue, right? And so the NFL could basically say, this is an aberration. We're going to project the revenue for 2021 to be higher than ever was because we're going to get this TV deal locked in.
And it'll bounce back, yeah.
Yeah, and so that could be, I mean, they could take the opposing view and say, sort of go along with the revenue for 2020, which is definitely going to be down.
Right.
But who knows what the owners are thinking? But I don't know if this pandemic thing is going to have as much of a.
Well, I mean, as long as the owners of the NFL are smarter than the owners of Major League Baseball right now,
that's going to be a main topic of IJB this week.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Let's do a little plug there. That's going to be fun to listen to on IJB this week.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so let's see. Captain Kurt, who was at Kurt Jones 5, mean and nasty, can't find that anymore. We didn't get a ton of comments this week, only a handful.
Yeah, that's all right. I mean, I saw the poll had gotten decent numbers,
Yeah, it was okay, considering it's June and we're polling about a guard. Yeah, sure.
Guard.
Last one, John Worrell, our buddy John Worrell, who's back. John will be back on IJB. Yes, after a long absence for personal reasons.
I'm sure
his comment was the red. What's that?
I said he might get into that on IJB, I assume.
I don't know. I mean, that's up to him.
Yeah.
Okay, so his comment was the Redskins do not have a good track record of coming out ahead in situations where they want to put players on wait and see deals. They need to start showing commitment to their players if they want good players to come here. That's John's opinion. He's not wrong. That's
why we've had him. That's why he helped us start this show. That's why he's on IJB now. John has good insights like that into the idea of how you build a successful franchise.
Yeah.
And
of course, we started the show because we thought, who was it, Jason Reed sucked on the radio.
Well, yes, that is why we started the show. Great writer, not good on the radio.
Yeah,
Well, he
always kind of rubbed me wrong.
Yeah, but John started the show with us. People sometimes forget that because I think he only did 3 months worth of shows, and he's like, "This is too much for me." Yeah. And now he does a show with you, which is kind of funny.
Well, if you remember, our buddy Rick Rogers on IJB. Yeah.
Did he replace Rick or Chris replace her? I don't remember.
No. Chris was an original.
Okay.
And then the original group was me, Chris, and Rick.
Right.
And then Rick also thought it was too much of a hassle. And that's when John came in.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, I'm glad he'll be back on the show because, John and I, we chat off and on. He's such a good guy.
I talk to him offline.
Yeah. Well, of course you do. You do a show with him.
I know, but I've talked to him. I call him every once in a while. And I've kept up with him in the past year.
Yeah. Cool.
With all his stuff that's going on.
Yeah.
I've kept up with him.
That's great. I'm glad he's back. Glad he's doing good. All right. Well, let's get in and start with Brandon Scherff because I wrote down, notes about all the guys we got to go through here, and his is just one sentence. This is his offensive line now. He's the leader. I think there's no question he's the best player on the line. There's no question that he's, the highest pedigree. He's the only first-round pick now, I believe. None of these other guys were first-rounders, any of the free agents.
No.
Yeah. So, this is his line, and I think he's got to set the tone for everybody. We know what kind of player he is. He is a tough, physical mauler of a guard. He's not like Trent Williams was a mauler, but he also had that agility and speed to get downfield and had crazy 40 times and stuff like that. Scherff isn't quite that. But I think he's more of your classic nasty mauler type.
That is exactly what it is. I agree. And
it's the kind of lineman I love, frankly.
First of all, in terms of the games he's missed, he played every game in his first 2 years, missed 2 games in 2017. So he only missed 2 games in the first 3 years. It's been the last 2 years where things have gone south. Played 8 games in 2018 and then 11 in 2019. So it's been the past 2 years that things have kind of gone south for him a little bit. Yeah, I mean, he's 28. He's almost 29. He's going to be 29 in December. So, I mean, I understand that person's concern because you put him at 34 years old, he'll have a big cap number. Depends on how the contract looks.
Yeah, of course.
But Alex, you're right. He's the leader of the line. You have to. I think it's even more important now that you have a guy like this on the line because you have to have somebody who's in charge from a player perspective. Otherwise it could be a disaster. Mm-hmm. Morgan Moses would be the other one, but I mean, I don't even know if Morgan. How long is he going to even play? How long is he going to be a Redskin?
Right.
Well,
and I mean, we've talked about when we talked tackles. I think we talked about the fact that the writing's kind of on the wall for him.
Yeah, exactly.
And when I look at Scherff, I see a lot of the traits you want in that position group. You know how you have team captains, but there's only 4 of them. I feel like every position group needs a de facto captain. Somebody who doesn't have the C on their chest, maybe, but he's that guy, and he has all the traits I think you want to see in that guy. He's not exactly outspoken and vocal, at least not publicly, but you can tell he commands a lot of respect amongst his peers on on the offensive line. And I think he just brings an attitude that I love to see, that quiet confidence, and he'll just beat the heck out of whoever's across from him.
Well, also, he's been to 3 Pro Bowls.
Yeah.
And you can talk if you want about the Pro Bowls don't mean anything and this and that, but the fact of the matter is it does mean something.
Right.
And the Redskins, to be honest, don't have a lot of Pro Bowlers.
No, not anymore.
This is not a team that's been – no, they don't. And he's He's been to 3 out of 5, and so he does command a lot of respect in the locker room. He's going to have to do that. The offensive line, we're going to get to the rest of these interior linemen. The room is pretty barren
and young.
In terms and young.
Yeah.
Yeah, him and Chase Roullier is the other one.
Right.
Chase Roulier's, been there, has some experience and all that. So it's those two guys really. But Brandon Scherff is the commander in chief.
Yeah, he really
is. He needs to be. I don't like the idea. I know some folks want to see him moved out to right tackle and get rid of Morgan Moses. I think that's a mistake. Why? All you're doing is creating another problem by doing that. Well, you're not solving anything.
Well, and I don't know how we'll go through all these guys, but when you look at the rest of the guards, it's not like we have a glut of talent. I think have 3 who can compete or 2 are going to be competing for the other starting job, and that's really it. Like if you move Scherff out, what's that mean for the other right guard? Like you're making one position weaker, and frankly, I'm not convinced he would be that much of a step up at tackle versus guard anyway.
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
It's would Scherff at right tackle plus some unknown person at right guard be better than Scherff at right guard and say Cornelius Lucas
right
at right tackle
or even Morgan Moses, who I know has issues. Yeah.
Right.
But, yeah.
So I think we're both in agreement that Brandon Scherff needs to stay at right guard. That's what he's best at. Mm-hmm. The Redskins need to sign him to long-term agreement now without delay.
Right.
Just do it.
Even if it's a 5-year deal, it's probably more like, how these contracts. It's going to be a 2 or 3 years plus with some other stuff on the back to make it look like 5 years.
It'll be a 5-year deal. It'll just give the team an out.
Right. That's what I mean.
Usually a lot of times the Redskins have deals that will backload them. They'll lower the cap in the first year and then backload it at the end for some reason, which I don't agree with. Like Landon Collins has a deal.
Well,
I
feel like a lot of NFL contracts are like that.
That's stupid, though. It's dumb.
It is.
Contracts should be front loaded to allow the team more options when the player gets older.
Right.
I don't agree with all of that, but be that as it may, Scherff is looking at he's going to want about $18 million a year. That's the magic number because he's going to want to beat Zach Martin. Mm-hmm. Okay, Zach Martin is the target because you could argue Zach Martin's a better player, but Zach's deal was 2 years ago.
Right.
And so Scherff is going to want a deal that beats Zach Martin. So you got to think $18 million a year, and that's a lot of money.
That makes him the number 1 guy if he gets that.
It will make him the number 1 guy, but frankly, he deserves it.
Right, he does, and you look at the cap situation right now as it stands, and if you kind of project out that Moses will be gone, which will be a lot of money off the cap for the line, like it's doable. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like giving big money to a guard. I don't mind. I don't understand these people who hate guards so much. Like, yeah, I know left tackle's more important, but a good run-stuffing guard, a guy who can pull, that opens up so much in your run game, more than a great left tackle does, in a lot of ways.
I mean, it's important. They're both important.
Oh, all 5 positions
I guess
are
that's
important.
What I would say.
Your offense is only as good as its worst lineman.
Yeah, that's right. I agree completely. So, I would do the $18 million average annual value.
Yeah,
I would just do it. I think he's worth it. The Redskins are not in a cap shortage, even with Morgan Moses. They can still afford it.
Yeah, they've got a ton of room right now.
Yeah.
And if they roll it all over, they're going to just have a glut of cap space next year.
Yeah, okay. Since I haven't done this in a while, the Redskins have got, if you incorporate the rookie pool, because the rookies haven't been signed yet, but if you factor that in, they've got about $30 million in cap space.
Right.
If you don't factor that in, it's up to about $37 million. So they've got a ton of room right now, even with Morgan Moses. It's fine. And like I've said, next year, they've got like $70 million in cap space already next year, assuming the cap doesn't go crazy. Because of this pandemic and whatnot. So they can afford Brandon Scherff. They really can. And
when
they'd be foolish to.
When you have that much room and that much money to play with, I know you said they usually backload these contracts. I would try and front load whatever his guaranteed money is. Put it all up front because you're going to need space down the road if Haskins works out, you're going to have to pay him.
Of course, it depends on what he's going to agree with, though.
Sure,
is the problem.
Sure. I understand it takes 2 to tango, but if you say, pick a number, 40, 50 million up front, That's going to be hard for him to turn down.
Well, it is.
Yeah.
I mean, so here, what I would do, and what most of these contracts do, is what you do is you give signing bonus up
Right.
front, and then you guarantee the year 1, year 2, and then you have year 3 become guaranteed at the end of
Year 2 or
either the first or second year.
Right.
You know, and so basically he's got 3 years guaranteed plus the signing bonus, and then the next 2 seasons aren't guaranteed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the smart way to do it. Whether he would want more guaranteed money down the road to kind of secure his place on the team, that's probably the negotiation point right there. You know, or games played incentives or something like that.
Sure.
Because like a games played incentive would be an easy to reach incentive. It would count against the cap.
right, and you're saying
You know,
if you miss 4 games or something, you get this much, that kind of thing, right?
Or yeah, right.
Yeah.
And that's would be an easy to reach. See, incentives either count or don't count against the cap based on whether they are easy to reach incentives or not. And the NFL decides it. So if you say to a guy like Jordan Veazey, the wide receiver, and say, you're going to get a $2 million bonus if you become an All-Pro.
Sure.
That's not an easy-to-reach incentive.
Right.
And so that doesn't count against the cap. Whereas if you say, Brandon Scherf, if you play 11 games, you're going to get a $2 million bonus, that's going to count against the cap because it's an easy-to-reach incentive. That's how it basically works.
Right.
And so there could be some of that thrown in there that'll increase his cap number. There's a lot of things. So personally, I agree with you. I would front load it as much as possible, you know, because I'm willing to gamble 3 years at least on
Yeah, I
Brandon
am
Scherf.
too. I think you'd be foolish not to.
Right.
Like, I know he has some injuries. We have a new medical staff. You got to kind of hope that, because I looked through just how many only like 13 or so guys didn't get hurt last year on this team. Like
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, the Redskins have drafted a lot of guys that have injury histories
that's
too.
part
so
of it
part
too.
Of it is on the team.
But now we have a new front office, new medical staff. You kind of hope that maybe that part of the culture changes. You know, and I know people like to say, well, you can't blame them for if they're writing up reports and not saying this guy's got a problem, then you can blame some of that on them. But we're not privy to that. So, all right, we spent enough time on Scherf here. I think we both are in agreement with the general public. This guy needs to be your cornerstone. I'm tempted to say, do you want to just go through guards, or do we want to go to the other starter, Chase Roullier?
No, this is guards and centers both.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
We'll do
Well,
both.
that's what I mean. So let's go with starter number 2. One of our only other entrenched starters at this point, and that's Chase. We were just talking about how Scherf is this kind of like, he's what you want to see as like an all-pro level guard. Roullier has quietly been a incredibly consistent center for us in some of the best ways. Like, I don't think he's missed many games. He's been very healthy. He doesn't beat people up, and he's not that same presence that Brandon Scherf has, but he's been very reliable for the Redskins these last couple of years as a starter.
Very reliable. Now, weirdly enough, and first of all, he's only missed 4 games in 3 years. He's a 2017 6th-round pick out of Wyoming.
He he didn't start his first year. I remember that, right?
Yeah, he didn't start his first year. He played 13 games first year, played and started 16 in 2018, played and started 14 last year. So he's really only missed, in terms of injury and whatnot, 5 games in his career. Mm-hmm. He's very reliable. I actually think, this is the cynic in me coming out, so take that for what you will, but I actually think the Redskins are trying to force him out, believe it or not.
I do too, and my question to you is that a mistake?
It depends on Keith Ishmael, really. Because I don't think Ross Piersbacher is going to be a starter. Remember, we asked Mark Bullock about him, and Mark said, no.
He's backup depth, and he's okay.
Right. Keith Ishmael, on the other hand, yes, he was, a 5th-round pick?
Yeah.
I think he was.
I mean, Roullier is a 6th-round pick.
Yeah, right. And Keith Ishmael has a lot of good film out there. PFF loves him for whatever. Take that for what you will. I don't take it for much. But he's a highly rated center, probably underdrafted in my view. I think he's, what I understand, neither one of us, like Alex, you always say, neither one of us are O-line experts. But I think he's maybe more of a zone scheme type. So that's, if Ron Rivera is going to run a power scheme,
right?
That may be held against him. But I actually think the Redskins are going to give Piersbacher and Ishmael a shot to grab the starting role because Roulier's they have this year and this year only because Roulier's rookie contract runs at the end of this year.
Right.
So they either have to sign him to a big deal, because he deserves a big deal, or they save the money and let Keith Ishmael or Pierce Bacher, but probably Ishmael, try to grab the job. So as much as I like Rouillet, don't be surprised if they let him go if Ishmael shows enough.
Yeah,
to the team
I mean,
somehow.
I agree with you that kind of looks like what they're trying to do. I think that's a mistake because I think now you said big deal. I think with a guy like Rouillet, you're talking about a late round draft pick. We saw them do this with Matt Ioannidis on the defensive line. You can get him to re-sign for maybe a 3-year, $7 million type deal. Like these late round draft picks don't always try and get the max deal because one, we're talking about a guy who hasn't been to any Pro Bowls yet. He doesn't have any of those accolades that really incentivize a massive contract. He's just been solid and reliable as a center. So I wonder, in his case, if it would take a max deal type deal, or can you get him for 5 to 7 good starter money for a couple years and keep him on? Because one of my pet peeves with just how teams are built, I think you need to have a good center quarterback relationship. And this guy's been reliable. He's been solid. Why risk losing that for some rookie who you haven't seen prove it yet?
The top paid centers in the NFL on an average annual value basis, Rodney Hudson, who just signed with Oakland last year, Mitch Morris, Buffalo, Nick Martin in Houston, Marquise Pouncey in Pittsburgh. It's those guys. They're all hovering around $11 million.
Okay.
Now, Pouncey has been to Pro Bowls.
Mm-hmm.
We like Chase, and he's been. I think he's starting to get some respect, but Chase hasn't been to any Pro Bowls.
Right, and that to me, is an indicator maybe he wouldn't be your big deal guy.
Well, yeah, that's right. I'm looking up. Oh shoot, I'm looking up Pouncey to see how many Pro Bowls Pouncey's been to.
I think all of them must have at least been to one. All those guys. I feel like.
Yeah, right. And so give me a second.
Oh, well, you look it up. Let me talk a little bit more about what I like about Rouillet. And other than the fact that, like I said, he's just a very fundamentally sound guy when you watch him. You don't see him make a lot of mistakes. I think he isn't quite as athletic as in terms of that zone blocking scheme type stuff like you were talking about with Ishmael, who we'll get to. But I think he has some of that ability. He's shown an ability to be mobile. He can pull from time to time, which, again, you want to see that from interior linemen. You want to see them be able to move around. I think the interesting thing about him, in my mind, is also I think he's versatile enough where if you needed to move him to guard, you probably could. And I think I look at all of our guys who are listed at center. They're all center guards. They have that slash in their position group. Because I think they all played guard or tackle or center at some point in their college film. If you look around, most of these guys move around a lot.
So Marquise Pouncey's been to 8 Pro Bowls.
Okay.
Rodney Hudson's been to 3. And, Rouillet just isn't at that level. So if you think, if you give him 9 or 10 million, say, in recognition of the cap going up,
sure,
that may be kind of where he is. Because if I was the team, I'd say you're behind these guys, at least. So I would say maybe you're talking 9 or 10 million a year average annual value. So if you give him a 3-year deal, 3 years between 30 and 35 million, 5 years, 5-year, 50 million.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're looking at.
Yeah. Which, I don't know if that's outrageous or not, frankly. I understand the teams are trying to, you got to play Moneyball at some point and, use rookies to replace veterans. But, to me, I think you've got a good, solid starting center. Why mess with it? If
that's my point. Sign him.
Yeah.
He's been good. I don't care. Keith Ishmael, great. I'm glad he's here. He's a talent.
Maybe he can take another spot. I don't know.
Ishmael, we're going to get to Ishmael. Ishmael's versatile. Ishmael started a lot at both center and guard.
Right.
He's not just a center. Like you just said, he's a guard/center
They're
guy.
All these guys are,
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not like left guard is entrenched in stone.
No.
at all. I think maybe Wes Martin probably is in the lead by default.
Right. Well, let's get to that spot first, because I'm calling it the War of the Wesses right now. Because you got Wes Martin and Wes Schweitzer. Both Schweitzer coming as a free agent from Atlanta, where he was a starter and not great from what you read about Atlanta folks saying about him.
Right.
Decent run blocker from what I could see in watching some highlights of him, but, not a perfect player. So I think, like you said, it's probably Wes Martin's job first, but I think Schweitzer's there to be like, if Martin can't do it, at least we have this as the backup option.
Yeah, I mean, Schweitzer's got a $2.5 million cap hit.
Right.
He was signed to a 3-year, $13.5 million deal. His dead cap is $4 million this year, so they could get rid of him as a post-June 1st cut and be fine.
Mm-hmm. But that's high backup money is what it is these days.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I don't think that's enough money for him to just be guaranteed a job.
No.
So, I mean, the only strike against Wes Martin, I guess, is he's the prior regime. And so this coaching staff does not have any connection to him. They may not feel like starting him just because he's a draft pick.
But we do know, even though it's prior regime, you do have Kyle Smith, who was held over, and he's now kind of the de facto GM. So, he's probably scouted Martin heavily.
Martin played pretty well, when he was filling in for sure.
Martin played well last year. We know he has the physical tools. I think he set like the record for bench reps in his class or something. He was insanely strong. I remember coming out last year. So we know he has the physical ability, but there's more to playing line than just that.
Wes Martin's another one of these Midwest farm boy, farm boy,
a lot
strong
of corn,
type guys.
A lot of corn involved somehow.
Yeah, he went to Indiana, so
right, and I remember when he was drafted, we had that funny little moment where, like 5 minutes after he was drafted, somehow he posted a picture of him in a Redskins hat waving a Redskins flag. And we're like, how the heck did he get those so quickly?
In like the middle of nowhere in Indiana.
Right. He was on a farm with a Redskins flag. Like he was just ready to go.
I mean, he might have went out and bought 20 or 32 different hats and had it sitting around his house, I guess.
I mean, we know some of these players can't afford to do that. Some can. Or their agent does it for them.
How much does a hat cost, Alex?
A new one, like
if you went down to Foot Locker and bought and so you're talking about dropping $900, or $1,000 on hats.
But then the banner's another like $40. So
Oh, that's right. He had a banner, didn't he?
Yeah. So then you're talking $2,000 just for that bit.
Maybe he got told he was going to be a Redskin early.
Well, I mean. We're not privy to this, but you do know that happens a lot. That guys are told, "Hey, if you're there when we're picking, we want to get you."
We're gonna have to ask him in training camp.
I tried asking him.
I think we did.
Yeah,
Didn't you? I thought
he dodged the
what
question.
Did he say?
I don't remember if he ever answered it. Yeah.
We need to ask him again. Say, we need an answer out of you. You've been here a year now. There's no reason to not tell us. We're dying to know.
Did you just know what happened? Maybe he's
does
maybe
your
he's a
father,
telepath.
Do your parents own a sporting goods store? I mean, what is it?
Yeah. But so, who do you like in that battle right now? Do you think Martin's got it, or do you? I know it's going to be hard to tell.
I don't. Wes Schweitzer to me is a jag.
Yeah.
I don't think he's a great player. I think he's a decent veteran presence on the line. I don't think he necessarily has to start because of his contract.
Mm-hmm.
I think Wes Martin proved a little something last year. So I think the job right now ought to be Wes Martin's to lose.
Right.
We don't know what this coaching staff thinks of him, of course, but I think if I was a betting person, which I'm not, if I was, I would bet on Martin right now.
I mean, that's kind of where the only thing for me, and this is just maybe me getting a little in the weeds conspiracy theory. Schweitzer played 3 years in Atlanta. So Ron Rivera, as a defensive guy, has watched a lot of Wes Schweitzer film, so he kind of knows what he's working with there. But, again, you're also talking about a defensive guy analyzing offense and that whole thing. So, that's the only thing.
There's no doubt seen a lot of Wes Schweitzer.
Yeah.
He's seen a lot,
Yeah,
no
he
doubt.
started 36 games in 3 years. But let me ask you, how good has Atlanta been in the last 3 years? You know,
They've been inconsistent.
right? So maybe that's not the best thing in the world.
I mean, listen, if you force me to choose, I'm picking Wes Martin.
Yeah.
I could be totally wrong.
But I think I'm with you
thought.
too, and that's not a knock against Schweitzer. He, like I said, right now you are paying him to be your sixth man, basically. And Lions need a sixth guy and a seventh guy. He's going to be your go-to guard backup when someone gets hurt, is what it looks like.
Yeah, and if there's one thing that I think Ron Rivera has made pretty clear with his comments and so forth, is that he's willing to play the best guy. Mm-hmm. So I think it'll be a battle, and I don't think he will hold back if Schweitzer clearly outplays Martin.
Right. Well, and I mean, we've seen that with previous regimes too. Anytime you come in a new coach, the first 2 or 3 seasons you preach a meritocracy, and then you usually get bogged down in, oh, this is my guy, I'm sticking with my guy, and that's when things get messy. Is coaches get too loyal to a player. But we saw that with Gruden, we saw that with Shanahan. They all come in, they say, I don't care who was here, I'm gonna find my guys. And, so that's when you see a lot of volatility and turnover. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about Ishmael, because I think he's kind of my next up on the list in terms of a big depth chart.
If he doesn't own a shirt that says "Call me Ishmael," something's wrong.
If he doesn't, we don't know what our access at camp will be. I'll try and ask him about it, and if he doesn't, maybe we'll spot him $20 for a shirt that says "Call me Ishmael."
Of course. Is he a classic literature fan? He may look at you like you're absolutely crazy.
He's got to know the reference. I watched a couple interviews with him this morning, at the Senior Bowl and stuff like that. He's a smart guy. He's got.
So he knows.
Yeah, he graduated college half a semester early so that he could play in the Senior Bowl and come out in this draft. He's not an idiot.
So he probably knows.
Right. I know it was San Diego State, but, it's not the worst school in the world.
No.
It's not like he went to college in Arizona.
Knows. Okay. So Keith Ishmael, like I said before, he's a versatile guy. He has significant starting experience at both guard and center.
Yes.
I think the Redskins are calling him a center, okay? When the Redskins have published materials about him, it's center Keith Ishmael. So that's what at least at a minimum the Redskins PR staff thinks of him as a center. But he's versatile I think the Redskins bring versatile guys in for a reason.
Right. He's very athletic when you watch him play.
Yeah.
He's one of these guys who will get downfield. Like you said, he's probably a perfect zone blocker type.
Yeah, he's not a mauler.
No, he is not strong. That's the knock. If you read about him, you'll see that pretty consistently in people's analysis. Is he needs to work on his NFL level strength, and even if you look at pictures of him, he doesn't look physically imposing. He's obviously what's he listed at 290 or 280 or something like that.
Well, he's listed at 309.
309. Okay, he looks smaller than 309.
He might be,
yeah.
But that's what he's listed at.
Yeah.
That's what I have him listed at.
Yeah, so I think he's going to need at least a year to kind of build that NFL strength, as they call it. Or
well,
maybe
the Redskins might not be maybe they're not going to run a lot of power either.
We don't know. We have no idea what their run scheme's going to be.
No, at a minimum, we know they're going to have a lot of Christian McCaffrey type plays. Which that's not a power scheme.
Well, and if you're going to do that kind of thing, that means you're going to be planning a lot of screens, which means you need to pull.
Right.
You need guys who are pulling a lot to make the screen game work.
We really just don't know.
No, not yet. And it's fine that we don't know. Well, I think that's going to be the fun part about this season is finding out what type of offense we are. We're going to see all new passing game, all new running game.
Yeah.
So in my mind, that's cool. But in terms of how that impacts who ends up getting starting jobs, who's here long term, there's a lot of factors that'll play into. But what I see with Ishmael with what I watched is I think he is a perfect pulling athletic zone guy. And if that's part of their plan, then I think he does have a future somewhere on this line. I don't know where, but somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's possible the Redskins are trying to give him an opportunity to replace Chase Roullier.
Right.
Because they don't want to sign Roullier to a big contract.
It could be.
That's the cynic in me, but that's, it's you can't ignore that as a possibility.
Well, and we thought that about Ross Pierschbacher last year, too. Like they were bringing him in maybe to do that initially.
After Mark talked to Mark Bullock about him,
Yeah.
though, I didn't really think that.
Yeah, I know.
Once Mark kind of poo-pooed him a little bit and said, that between Martin and Pierce Barker, he was higher on Martin.
Yeah.
That kind of soured me on Pierce Barker a little bit in terms of his starter potential. Because don't forget, Pierce Barker is a fifth-round draft pick.
Right.
And just the odds of becoming a starter out of a fifth-round draft pick are very small.
Yeah, but, again, you look at most of this line, it's all day 3 picks. Other than Brandon Scherff, of course, who's a number...
It's a pretty low-rated line, though.
Yeah. But I'm talking specifically these interior guys we're going through.
Yeah.
Wes was a 4th or 5th rounder last year. Chase is a 6th rounder. Pierschbacher, like we just talked about. Ishmael, we just talked about. All these guys are day 3 picks. You don't even have second rounders that we're looking at.
Chase Rea has defied every expectation.
Yeah, and it's been great. But even the guy he replaced, Long, was a 4th rounder, wasn't he? Or was
Spencer
he
Long?
Wasn't he? He was a 3rd or 4th rounder.
I think he was a 3rd. I think he was a 3rd.
But
and don't forget, then they had the other center, the guy Corey Lichtensteiger.
Yeah.
Who was another guy that was like a low draft.
Good pull.
Pick.
Good, but that's just the history this team had was late round guys.
I met Corey Lichtensteiger's brother by accident. I saw him at a game. I saw the one guy in the game. I was at it was a Texans game, Texans-Redskins game, and I saw somebody wearing a Lichtensteiger jersey. I thought, wow, that's
a deep cut.
This has got to be a relative. Yeah. And so I went up and talked to him, and he said, yeah, that was his brother.
Corey's brother Rory or something.
I don't know. I can't remember what his name was.
I feel like if you got a Corey, you got to have a Rory.
I just thought, who else but a family member is going to be wearing a jersey of the center?
Right. Yeah.
Not a lot,
I don't know. I feel like if you're, and this is just my weird thing about jerseys, if you're like a 300-pound fan, stop wearing quarterback jerseys and just start finding O-line jerseys because, that looks better on you.
Personally, I think if you're significantly older than the players, you ought to not be wearing anybody's jersey, if you ask me.
There's that, too. My other belief is you should not wear a jersey of anybody who, wasn't playing when you were a teenager.
Right.
If you wanted to wear a Riggins jersey, that's fine, because Riggins was...
I have a Darryl Green jersey that if I go to a Redskins game, that's what I wear.
That's totally acceptable.
Right.
Yeah, I'm fine
Hall
with
Famer,
adults wearing that
generation.
kind of thing. Yeah.
I love Dwayne Haskins and all that. Great. I'm happy he's a player, but I'm not wearing a Dwayne Haskins jersey.
The youngest player jersey I have is Chris Cooley, and that's probably gonna.
For your generation. That's reasonable. I wouldn't wear a Cooley jersey because he's younger than me.
That's fine too. But we're not. We're getting off track talking about that stuff.
We have nothing but time.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so we kind of touched on Pierschbacher a little bit. I don't have much else to say other than the fact that when I look at his play style, it's the antithesis of Keith Ishmael. Whereas Ishmael is this uber fast, athletic, lean-looking guy. Pierschbacher is just like the wide load, physical. You put him on the line, he won't get pushed back a lot, but he's not going to move around.
Don't forget, Pierschbacher's from Alabama.
Right.
And what style does Alabama play? They maul everybody.
Yeah.
So that's definitely Pierschbacher. Whether or not he can maul effectively at a starting level is another matter.
No.
I have my doubts.
I do too.
Because I do trust Mark.
When I look at, if you're going to make him a backup, just be a guy who stands on the line and doesn't get pushed into the quarterback. That's a win. We saw way too much of that over the years. I don't need to see any more. All right, let's see. Who else we got? I'm just scanning.
We got Michael Ledecky.
Oh, Michael Ledecky.
Don't forget Ledecky. I guess it's probably Ledecky, right?
I don't care because guess what? He's been here from Tampa Bay. He's never really played. He's a career bench warmer / practice squad guy.
Well, no,
I think he's shown up in 13 games in his career, and it's almost all special teams. I was looking at snap counts. And
you looked at snap counts because he was active for a short period of time in 2018. Was active for 9 games.
Right, but it was all special teams play.
Special teams.
I think he had 10 snaps
really
on the line.
All I can say about Ledecky, first of all, he's from Illinois State, undrafted free agent. all you can say about a guy like this, he has an opportunity with this offensive line being in flux. He has an opportunity to prove himself.
Sure.
And that's all you can ask for when you're a guy like Michael Ledecky.
Right.
Or Ledecky, or however you pronounce his name. This is probably the last time we ever mention him on the show. You know, but who knows? Maybe he's going to wow everybody. I'm not going to pretend like I know. I've watched a moment of Michael Ledecky film. I haven't.
Right. And, hey, because you and I look at different lists. Jeremy Yeah. Do you have him listed as a guard or a tackle? Because I've seen him.
I've listed him as a tackle.
Oh, okay. Okay. So we won't even get into him really then. But he's in that same Michael Ledecky category where, he's there. Probably won't talk about him much because.
Yeah, I mean, really, the only reason I put Vujinovic as a tackle is because he was 6'5".
Right.
I mean, you never know. I mean, he's another guy that's, he's offensive lineman.
Right.
Is what
generic
he is.
offensive lineman, and not a lot of film on him because he went to like a third or Division III school. And I saw
Louisiana College.
The only thing I could find on him when I was looking up these guys was from his rookie year, an interview he did with like his hometown TV station.
Oh, really?
And let's just say he looks more like a rec league guy than an NFL guy in that video. A lot of beer gut going.
Yeah. Like I always say, Alex knows this, but I have to put these guys on somewhere on our chart, on our salary cap chart, and so I stuck Vujinovic as a tackle.
But he's, like you said, generic lineman.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But in order to separate the groups and do the salary cap right, I have to assign him a spot, and that's what I did. So to summarize guards and centers, Ishmael, Ledecky, Martin, Piersbacher, Rouye, Scherf, and Schweitzer. That's the group. If you want to count Vujinovic, fine. My view of the starters, interior starters, Brandon Scherf, Chase Rouye, Wes Martin, with Ishmael and Schweitzer being probably the primary backups.
Yeah.
Piersbacher, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. And, Piersbacher probably hits the practice squad or something. The new rules are you have to keep 8 linemen active on game day, and that kind of changes things.
Well, you don't have to, but you lose a spot if you don't.
Right. There's an incentive to.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it'll be interesting to see. But I think the interior is pretty set when you look at. There was a lot more volatility when we were talking about tackle and who might make it and who won't. But this interior, looking at those guys, I think it's pretty clear kind of what direction they're going.
Yeah, they may not be good.
Right.
But, the direction is obvious.
Well, I have more faith in Rouye, Sheriff, and Martin than I do on outside tackle right now.
Well, there's no reason to be hopeful about tackle.
No. Other than maybe the rookie works out.
Hopefully Sadiq Charles works out, but he's a 4th-round pick himself.
Right.
That has had maturity issues and all that, as we talked about, and he's a gamble.
Right.
It's the tackle situation is pretty bad, and that's why I was preaching against Jason Peters and Donald Penn for the entire offseason. But that was sort of based on them doing something, anything, bringing in a steady,
right. And they didn't.
Somebody, and they never did.
Well,
so at this point, maybe out of desperation.
Now, Ron Rivera had his press conference, and he talked a little bit about that to transition to another topic here. But Rivera kind of said, and I didn't watch the whole thing. I was busy somehow, and but I saw the highlight where he said he wants to see what he has in all these young guys before he brings in a veteran, which – if you are taking a let's build a team approach, it's the right approach to take. I mean, it means you're going to lose some more games probably, but that's the way you build a roster is by giving the young guys a shot, not just always getting a 36-year-old and hoping he works out instead.
Well, yeah, that he also, it must be said, answered that question. That answer came in response to a question about Antonio Brown.
True.
And
but
so
he
they
also
said, you want to sign
Peters.
Antonio Brown? Yeah, he did. And so, like you, I kind of think that he's, at this point, absent an injury, the offensive line group is what it is.
Right.
And you're going to see if they keep the 10, it's Charles, Christian, Morgan Moses.
Right.
Maybe in somebody else, the best of Tim and Paris, Paul Adams and Vujinovic, and Lucas. So that's 5. And then, the interior guys, Martin, Rouye, Scherf, Schweitzer.
Mm-hmm.
that's 9. If you keep 10, one,
Right.
somebody else,
Right.
So that's kind of your group.
Yeah.
I don't think they want to bring in, and I don't think Peters wants to be a Redskin either.
No. Now, I'm assuming if it's week 8 and he still doesn't have a job and he wants to play and make some money,
Listen, the Redskins have brought guys in off the street every year for the past 3 years.
Yeah, of course.
Injuries.
Yeah. But was there anything else in that Rivera presser that stood out to you? I know that was kind of the big topic that came up.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. I know Kerrigan had a presser, Terry had a presser, Haskins, we said, had a presser. I didn't watch most of them because, again, I was just busy and didn't get a chance to. But did any quotes or anything pop out to you when you were?
It did for McLaurin. That's why I put the video up on our site. And thanks to the Redskins for letting us use it. Redskins.com, rather. But I was very impressed with Terry McLaurin. He came across as very smart, intelligent, a good attitude, soft-spoken but confident. I really liked what he had to say. I mean, I cut all the questions out. What we got was a video of the Zoom meeting, of the Zoom presser.
And you edited it down.
I edited it all down, and I cut all the, we had to look at the reporters' ugly faces, and I cut all that out. But, they asked him about whether you're going to be the alpha on the wide receiver, and he didn't arrogantly embrace it, but he said, listen, if I am, I am, basically.
Yeah.
He was, Terry McLaurin is going to be a star.
He is.
I think. The Redskins really struck gold with Terry McLaurin, and I think he got disrespected is the wrong term, overlooked a bit because he was at Ohio State and they had so many other receivers and all of that. But he really said all the right things. He's been training all offseason prior to this coronavirus stuff happening.
He was down there working out with Dwayne Haskins, which is great. And
he talked about how in shape Haskins was.
Well, I think we've all talked about that to a point where it's a little creepy.
Yeah, but he was there, though, and he saw it firsthand.
I've made the jokes that, to me, if you look at Dwayne Haskins, you could put the picture of him a year ago and today, and it almost looks like a different person. He's lost that much weight.
All of them, they all got asked about their views on protests and whatnot, and we just kind of skipped that,
right?
Because it's not really football. But on Dwayne, Dwayne mentioned that he had wanted to get all the receivers together. McLaurin. Look, here's what I got out of this. You want kind of a macro point? The receivers going forward are McLaurin, Harmon, and Sims.
Sure.
I think the Redskins intentionally, after they lost out on Amari Cooper, who's all-pro, I think they intentionally did not bring a pro. I think what I'm getting out of the combination of the comments between McLaurin, Rivera, and Haskins are that they are happy with those three guys.
Well, obviously we brought in AGG and Gibson in the draft, and Gibson's kind of a mixed receiver running back, as we've talked about.
Yeah.
But
right.
I look at those guys as, we're building up a young core, see who works out, and then when this team is finally ready to compete in a year or two, maybe you're like, well, we need a star receiver or we don't. If we can find two really good receivers out of that group, then we're set. We don't. You back them up, obviously, but you really want just to make sure you have two of these guys work out.
Yeah, and I think the Redskins are confident in all of them, actually. I think they are, and that's why we didn't see them chase somebody besides Amari Cooper.
Right. Well, if you extrapolate Sims' numbers and Harmon's numbers and just say, well, what did they do in the last couple games? They both would put up around 700 yards if they start a whole season.
Sims is great.
Yeah.
I found him by accident when I was watching Jordan Brailford film last year. And, I just saw this dude, playing against Oklahoma State who was, looked incredible on the outside. And, it turns out it was Steven Sims.
He's a small dude from a smaller school. I know Kansas is a power school technically, but they're one of those ones you kind of whatever.
Well, Kansas State was Kansas State.
Kansas
I think,
State,
right?
whichever. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
No one cares about Kansas. As a state as a whole, I don't think anyone really pays attention to them outside of the Wizard of Oz. So
outside of the fine residents of Kansas, of course.
Right. but their best city is in Missouri.
It was Kansas, not Kansas State.
Okay.
But yeah, anyway, point is, if you want a macro on the field thing, because again, they all talked about protests and whatnot, but in terms of on the field stuff, that was the macro level point I got from all of them, is that is the group. The Redskins are confident in those three guys. Yeah, if AGG works out, I like him, great. But going forward to start the year, that is the group,
right? And
they like all three of them. That's what I got out of this.
I think that's a fine jump. That if that's your jumping off point and you want to try and develop them, I think that there's a sense to that. There's a logic to that. At some point, you have to be a team. You have to stop being a team that tries to just find superstars to get to 500 every year, and you actually have to build a core the right way. And
that's what they're doing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's been neglected for far too long. Remember a couple of years ago we were talking about how long it had been since the Redskins had drafted a good receiver? Yeah. And we were like, well, we drafted McLaurin and Crowder, and then before that...
We went all the way back to Art Monk.
Right. Before those two guys, you had to go back to Art Monk to find somebody who was at all successful.
Because Gary Clark and Ricky Sanders, both were USFL guys.
Right. And then, other than that, it was Michael Westbrook, who was a psychopath, and
a bust,
and Rod Gardner, who was a bust. So,
right,
it was slim pickings at that position group for a long time.
They've been terrible, horrible picking wide receivers.
Yeah. So hopefully, like I said, I just need two of these guys to work out at some level, and then we're okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we had one more topic to get to. And related to all the protest stuff, but we're going to keep this more Redskins focused this time. And that is that the mayor was asked about, she did an interview, I think, with 980, and she was asked about the stadium and bringing the stadium to D.C., and as well as the name as being a hindrance to that. Of course, it kind of got blown up, and I think even her comments get misconstrued a little bit by the press, because now it's all the mayor says they need to change their name, where what she was asked was, is the name a hindrance to the team getting a stadium in the city? And she said, that's been a problem with both local politicians and the feds, which are obviously the feds are important. So that came up. But I thought the more interesting stuff I've been reading about this week is, what do you do with the George Preston Marshall statue that's sitting outside RFK Stadium still? No one likes George Preston Marshall's history. I think it's safe to say even someone like you, Steve, who's on the right of things, we all recognize he's a horrible racist.
George Preston Marshall is an open and avowed racist. He made no secret of it. He kept African Americans off the Redskins because they were African American. Keep them out of the NFL
for years.
He made a specific effort to keep them out of the NFL. Right. He's an awful human being.
Right. Nobody likes
even from me as a Republican. Here's the thing, man. Republicans don't like racists either. Okay, we may differ on what you call a racist, but everybody hates bad people, including Republicans. And George Preston Marshall was an awful person. So in terms of the statue, I think it's basically there because nobody's bothered to take it down more than anything.
Yeah, well, I remember talking to Rick Snyder about this, and I think this might have been off air, so I'm not going to say anything here as a quote from him, but the gist of it is nobody wants to pay to get rid of it. Which is part of the problem.
How much can it cost to get rid of it?
You got to get a bulldozer, You got to.
Okay, a couple $1,000.
It's got to go somewhere. Someone's got to throw it in a shed somewhere. Which, all right, another $1,000 for a shed. But
I do believe, though.
But the other thing is, people have tried destroying it before. Like, not even this protest stuff going on now, but people have tried destroying that statue, and then they have to fix it. Somebody has to pay to get it fixed, which is weird to me.
Well, what I don't agree with this and sort of history in general is you can't just ignore history.
No, of course
he is a part of the Redskins. What you don't do is celebrate him. He doesn't deserve to be celebrated, but you don't ignore the fact that he was the founding owner of the Washington Redskins, because he was.
Right.
What you don't do is you celebrate him by putting him in a little garden with a fancy statue. That's probably bad. But, not that the team is, but
no, the team, I don't blame the team for this. Like, that statue was technically put there by the federal government. It's not the team.
Yeah, and the city of D.C. still has a lease on the RFK site for a while longer. And so it's either the city's job or the federal government, one of the two. It's definitely not the Redskins.
No, knock it down. I don't even care if the statue's kept anywhere. you know what? Like, it's nice marble. Turn it into somebody's kitchen countertops. I don't care.
Well, again, now you could put it in a museum, somewhere and say this is, this is history, but it doesn't need to be there. I agree. In terms of Mayor Bowser, first of all, she's flip-flopped, right?
Yeah,
because at one point in time, she's
flip-flopped a couple times.
The name. Many, said like 3 times.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I think the name change thing is a dead issue. And it deserves to be a dead issue.
I mean, it's
At
coming
this
back
point,
up because of everything going on, and I understand why, but...
I guess. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, the term Redskins, at this point, the only thing it really means is that it's the name of a team. I don't think anybody uses that term for any reason ever anymore. It's an antiquated term. We can argue about the origins because there is an argument to be made that it did not originate with Caucasians. It originated with Native Americans.
There's that, and I think there's a fair argument too that at some points in history it also was a derogatory term.
Yeah, yes, but in today's world, the only one who uses the term is the Redskins. That doesn't really bother me. I'm part Cherokee, for whatever that works. It doesn't really matter. I think the whole thing is dumb. And furthermore, more importantly, though, I've always said, and every time we've had segments on this show and IJB about where the stadium's going to go, I've always said the idea that the stadium can be in D.C., it's always been far-fetched.
Logistically, yes.
There's way too many issues to build a stadium in D.C. There's federal issues, there's city issues, all kinds of stuff. It's much harder from a land use perspective, particularly even more so with the RFK site. So I think this is much ado about nothing, and I think ultimately the stadium will go somewhere else.
I hate the idea that it'll be somewhere else because I think it belongs in. I believe sports venues are best in a downtown setting.
I think everybody would agree that the stadium ideally would be better in D.C.
Right. It's just it centralizes things. I think
they're the Washington Redskins. Right. They're not the Virginia Redskins.
And now there was another discussion, and this was just amongst commenters on our website about. What kind of thing needs to be...
Insert my snarky comment about our commenters.
Sure. Insert here. And I might agree with some of that snark lately because they've been a little bit more out of control than usual.
Hey, start deleting.
Yeah. Well, that's why we made somebody else in charge of that. Because, I have that weird... I don't like censoring speech thing. But nothing to do with that. We had a little discussion about what do you need to see wherever they rebuild. And...
what do you need to see? What do you mean by that?
What kind of vision does the team have, and what kind of stuff needs to be built around it? Because the one thing that the gripe about Landover is you built it in the middle of nowhere and you didn't build, and there's nothing around it. If they stay at Landover, I assume they would have to build in one of the parking lots. Like you're not going to tear it down and then start over. Like that takes.
Well, you could. You could absolutely do that.
But generally, when teams stay in one site, they build like next to where they were. That way, they don't have to relocate for 5 years.
Yeah, but it's not necessary.
No, not necessarily. But in terms of we don't want to.
They'd have to move basically to the University of Maryland for a couple seasons at a minimum.
Right, and
if they did,
I think it takes longer. I mean, how fast do you think a stadium takes to get built? 2 years?
They could do it in 2 years. They could do it in 2 seasons.
Right, but.
So I think you'd have to do 2 seasons at realistically University of Maryland. It's probably the only place in the area that they could go that's close.
Right. And that's a pretty small. Now Redskins don't even get 50,000 to most of their games, so it's not like that's an issue.
It might be better if they played in a smaller stadium.
And University of Maryland, even though I'm not a Maryland fan, they have a cool stadium. Like if you watch them on TV, it's an interesting looking old college stadium.
I'm just talking about, I mean, where else could they go? Georgetown has a football team, but their stadium probably isn't anywhere near
it's 3,000
NFL
seats.
Quality. Yeah, right. And so then you're talking about George Washington, George Mason, none of them have
no football teams.
Close. And so,
George Washington had a football team in the 40s, I think, and then it got disbanded. So it's been a while.
If you wanted to go all the way to Richmond, even there, the Richmond,
they don't have
whatever
a stadium.
They are, no, like UVA does, but you're talking a long way. So really, it's University of Maryland or bust.
Right. Annapolis ain't going to be big enough, even
No, it's not.
But anyway, so I was looking at what would you do, and I mean we know Dan Snyder wants a casino. That's the weird thing that he's kind of made clear is he wants to have sports betting and possibly a casino.
I don't think it's weird at all. I think it's the future. You could argue about the morality of it, but it's the future.
I don't care about the morality of it.
I kind of do.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
yeah.
not a huge gambling fan.
Well, I don't gamble,
regardless.
but like to me, if you want to waste your money, waste your money.
Yeah, that's another podcast.
Yeah.
But point is, Dan Snyder wants gambling because he knows he can make a truckload of money.
But my assumption is, let's say they stayed at Landover site, because this is where I kind of thought about it. The best thing you could do, because you're going to build a smaller stadium anyway, you're going to have more parking space, or need less parking space if you cut down the number of people coming. If you're going to build a casino, you probably have a multi-floor parking lot somewhere for that even.
Yeah.
Build some commercial stuff in your property that you can, one, charge rent to, and, two, it means people will more likely hang around year-round and after games and stuff. Like, if you look at what the Patriots did with their venue, that kind of became the prototype for what you're seeing now in L.A. and Oakland, or not Oakland, Vegas as well, where people are buying all this land. They're building a city around their stadium as they're building their stadium, basically.
Well, yeah, I mean, the biggest one for that is what the Rams are doing.
Right, because it's like 2,000 acres or something, right?
Yeah, but remember, Stan Kroenke is a real estate developer. Right. He's a major, huge commercial real estate developer. Dan Snyder does not do that. No, he's never been a real estate developer.
But at the same time, if you're getting this land, it doesn't take a genius to see, hey, do what Kroenke does.
I mean, I lived in Prince George's County in the 90s, and back then it was awful.
Yes.
And you never went to Landover Mall because you didn't want to get mugged or shot.
Sure.
Jamal, our own Jamal, said it has improved in recent years.
Right, and I live close by. It has definitely improved. Yeah.
Okay. And so if that's the case, then, sort of the idea would be gentrification via commercial retail development.
Right, which is what you saw
kind of
like
idea.
Downtown D.C., which is one of the models for doing that, frankly.
You saw it in Houston with the development of the Astros stadium,
you see
Minute Maid
a lot of places now. That it's become a successful. There's a successful model people have created to do this in cities and close by suburbs. Doing it out in Dulles, I don't know if that works as well, but
I mean, if you're a Virginia resident, you wouldn't mind it. But it is true. I mean, for those of you who don't live in the D.C. area, that's a long damn way out.
Is.
It really is. Even for a suburbanite, that is in the country.
Right.
Almost way out there. It's a long, long, long way.
If you look at a map, Dulles is as far from the city as like Annapolis or even Baltimore. So,
yeah, and more importantly, there's just not a lot of development. You really are truly driving out into the country to go out that far.
And they're talking about past Dulles too. People need to remember, we're not talking Ashburn. We're talking out like 25 minutes past Dulles.
Yeah, it's not an ideal situation. No. Really isn't. Now, don't forget, the history of this is that Jack Kent Cooke did not pick Landover. No. He got stuck with Landover. He spent years trying to find land, and basically the only place he could get done is Landover.
Right. He had a handshake deal to do it in Crystal City of Arlington, but that fell through.
And then people complained.
Yeah. They had a deal to rebuild at RFK, and then he smacked the mayor on the butt or something, or said something. I don't know. It was some weird sexual harassment thing.
I don't remember that, but I'll take your word for it. I mean, but the fact of the matter is, there's just not a lot of land.
Right.
Like we talked about, and Rick Snyder's talked on his show about how the National Harbor area, down there off the Beltway in, 295? Yeah. That's, for a variety of reasons, is not really a great option anymore. You can't really go up to the northeast part of the Beltway because now you're almost infringing on the Ravens territory. Right. Virginia is a long way out, and they have a new governor, which doesn't seem to be nearly as high on the Redskins as the prior governor was.
No, because he's a Southern Virginia, not a Northern Virginian. So,
is that what it is?
Yeah,
okay.
I think that's a big part of it. You know how Virginia is like that.
Stuck with Landover. Yeah. Yeah. My mom's from Virginia. I get it. Maybe Landover is the way to go.
Yeah.
But that having been said, the guy who put the Landover deal together is dead.
Right.
The old commissioner of Prince George's County, who was the one I was kind of involved with Wayne Rogers, it died. And so I don't know how the new people running Prince George's County feel about it, which is not something we've ever.
No, I don't think we've ever looked into it.
Because Wayne Rogers was the guy who got it done.
I don't know if his last name was Rogers. I can't remember his last name, but I remember first name Wayne. I met him years ago. The guy who we're talking about, Wayne Curry, I think is who it is.
That was it. Wayne Curry. Wayne Rogers is the actor from MASH.
Right.
Yeah.
No, but
he's the guy who played Trapper John. But yeah, Wayne Curry.
I met
Wayne
him
Curry's the guy who got
back
the deal
when I was doing Maryland politics stuff, and he was a nice guy.
When he was he was a total sleazeball.
Well, all
but
politicians.
he's a politician. Yeah, but see, Wayne is dead, and so I don't know how the people who are currently running Prince George's County feel.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I have no idea, one way or another.
I mean, I think they've been so focused on building up that the harbor in PG,
Yeah.
you know. And people have to realize that there's going to be a conflicting thing. Then if Dan wants a casino up in Landover, that's 2 casinos in PG County, which then infringes on the casinos up in Baltimore, and they get all upset about it. And, like, there's little politics, things like that will factor into it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, it's, the lease expires in 2027. They have some time.
They have.
Again, it only is going to take them 2 years to actually do the construction, and you can get the whole deal done in 5 if they really had to. So, I mean, they've got some time.
Yeah, I mean, they have some time, but we've been talking about this for as long as we've been doing the show. That time, because again, like you said, 2 years for construction, that time is running out. Like, every year, that number significantly gets lower.
Having done some stadium deals, I think realistically they've got through the end of about 2022 to get this. I think that's the magic. If you get beyond that, then it's a problem.
Right. So if you don't have a land deal at least figured out by then, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's so many other issues that go along with it. So, I think they've got basically 2 more years. And then if it doesn't happen, you might start to see Dan Snyder say, well, I can move to
London.
Somewhere else or, wherever. Yeah. And he'll use that as leverage. And hopefully he wouldn't do it, but you never know.
That would be – and we've talked about that before, and I think we talked about it – I've talked about it with Rick Snyder one-on-one once or twice, and you probably have too. Yeah. Or we've talked about it with him offline, and he's like, I don't think it would happen, but I guess. It would be very interesting if suddenly Dan Snyder threatens to leave.
I mean, Dan Snyder's a D.C. guy. Yeah. He's from Maryland. So you would think not, but on the other hand, you're talking about a $2 billion, $3 billion asset. Mm-hmm. That's going to trump hometown, I would think. Weirdly enough, the only owner who might have moved the team is Cook.
Right.
Cook's from California. He's originally a Canadian native, but was from California. He owned the Lakers. He owned TV and radio stuff out in California. I think we actually got pretty lucky that the RFK deal was early on in its tenure when he became the owner in the late 60s.
Well, I think also the one thing that we had going is when he bought the team and when he was threatening to move, if you really think about it, the Rams were still there. California was pretty well saturated with football teams,
right?
For most of Cook's life. Like, when did the Rams leave for St. Louis? Was that in the 80s, late 80s?
Yeah, I think so. Hold on.
Because it was the St. Louis Cardinals, and then the Rams replaced them. It might have been the early 90s, actually. But regardless, I think California was always well saturated during Cook's time.
1995.
Was that late? Wow. I thought it was the 80s.
Yeah.
But anyway, my point being, that would have been the only place he would have moved, and L.A. was covered.
Yeah, that's true. But in terms of Snyder, I mean, if it really goes south for him.
Right.
Because maybe the new guy, the reason why I brought up the leadership of PG County, we don't know how they feel about the name and all that. And there's significant, Maryland's already building, is already paying for the Ravens Stadium, state of Maryland. There's no telling, there's no saying, and they're paying for the casino, already. As Rick has mentioned, Rick's the one that brought that up. They're paying for the casino. They may not want to spend a ton of money either. So it may not be a great deal. There may not be a great deal in Maryland either. And if that's the case, if he's truly shut out of everywhere, maybe he starts threatening to move somewhere.
And, as much as he's a Maryland guy, remember, he did go to school for a few years in London when his dad was over there.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be London. There's other markets in the United States.
Sure, but we all know London's where the NFL wants to.
I think it's
I
dumb.
do too,
dumb.
But we know that's their thing.
But you could do, Salt Lake City, San Antonio, Texas, probably, which would be ironic and awful. But, that's a possibility. There's a couple other markets.
St. Louis, again, that is a town that loves sports. It wouldn't be wild.
St. Louis, Portland, Oregon, maybe. Yeah. Portland's become that hotbed of stupidity, so I wouldn't do anything.
I don't think Portland would pay for a stadium. That's the problem.
Yeah. So, but point is, there's other markets in the U.S. that if it doesn't happen in the next 2 years, you might start to hear rumors of it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked, but I still think it would all just be empty threats. The NFL,
hopefully, Hopefully.
You and I both know the NFL wouldn't like to see a team leave DC. Like,
not a team that has been there since 1937.
right. And we also know if they move anywhere, that this whole name debate that we've had here,
It'll be
yeah,
gone.
the Redskins will disappear. Like it might, they'll be a franchise, but it's going to be a different name, different everything.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, and you'll lose a significant amount of the fan base. But again, what is the fan base now?
right. Well, and you know what? If,
Nobody's going to build a stadium if we can't guarantee more than 10,000 people a year
right.
a game.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, exactly. So it's gonna, that is just something that we always have to watch as fans. And you and I, because we both love like the business side of sports and like very differently, but like it's been a lot of fun to always watch it.
Yep.
Well, I think we've gone over. Did we miss anything? No, I think we covered everything on our schedule.
Oh, real quick, we got named as one of the 15 best Redskins sites by FeedSpot. So, which we appreciate the honor from that. So, thank you to FeedSpot.
Yes.
And check them
Yeah,
out.
so that's cool. I'll take top 15 of the like
Sure,
500,000 fan sites that are out there. There are more Redskins fan sites than there are fans at this point.
That's true. There are, and we're just look. I mean, we're just a couple of couple of yokels
right.
who are running a site here. So, yeah, it's an honor, and I'm glad people enjoy it.
I'll take it.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in to this week's podcast. Hopefully, we're going to start seeing more and more activity at Redskins Park, which means we'll start having more and more stuff to talk about because that's why we're here. We don't want to talk about off the field stuff as much.
Yeah, it's June though. It's
yeah, I know. All right, take care out there, guys. Bye.